I reached out to Shrum Homes.
Chet, I have 1 o'clock. You all right to go ahead and start?
That sounds good.
All right. Welcome everybody to I lose count of which number CVTA TAC meeting this is, since there were 4 over the last month. This is the scheduled meeting that we have had on the docket for a while. And without any further ado, we have a statement regarding virtual meetings that was posted, so we do not need to read that. Is that correct, Chet?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So Nicole, would you like to do roll call and certification of a quorum?
Yes, sir. Let's start with Town of Ashland, Miss Amos. Charles City County, Miss Russell. Chesterfield County, Miss Smith.
Here.
Miss Walker.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Kilduff. Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas. Mr. Flagg.
Here.
Henrico County, Mr. Yor.
Here.
Miss Meidler.
Here.
New Kent County, Miss Leduc.
Here.
Powhatan County, Mr. Pompey.
Here.
Mr. Chardine. City of Richmond, Miss Clark. Mr. Bridewell. DRPT, Mr. Brule. Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
VDOT, Mr. Mann.
Here.
Mr. Riblet.
Here.
GRTC, Ms. Torres.
Here.
Ms. Del Ross.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Dean.
Here.
And Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here, Ms. Clark has joined us.
Thanks, Chet. Mr. Chairman, I can confirm that we have a quorum.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the November 9th CVTA TAC meeting minutes. Everybody had a chance to review. Any comments? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion.
This is Barb Smith. I'll move for approval.
This is Nora Amos. I second.
Thank you, Barb and Nora. Okay, so no questions or corrections, then we'll do a roll call.
Mr. Chair, I believe we can approve these minutes by acclamation unless anyone has any suggestions or corrections that need to be made.
That works. So anybody have any issues with this? Hearing none, then motion passes. Next is the meeting minutes from the special call meeting on November 20th for the TAC meeting. So we handle that the same way, Chet? Right.
Yes, sir.
So we don't need to take a motion. We just ask for basically.
Mr. Chair, if we could get a motion and a second on the meeting minutes, but then a verbal roll call, I'm sorry, not a roll call, but just a verbal vote would be fine to make sure there are no one is opposed.
Okay. So in that case, we'll entertain a motion for the November 20th meeting minutes.
This is Barb Smith. I'll make a motion to approve the special called meeting minutes.
Thank you, Barb. Do we have a second?
This is Nora Amos. I'll second.
Thank you, Nora. So we have a motion and a second for the adoption of the meeting minutes from November 20th. Does anybody have any issues with that motion? Hearing none, meeting minutes are approved. Next item is public comment period.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm sorry, could we go back to item 2? I believe we skipped approval of the November 9th meeting minutes. We have 2 meeting minutes on this agenda today.
We did both.
We did both?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you.
We just weren't going to do a roll call on either. Basically by verbal, we had a consensus.
Just wanted to make sure we covered the 9th and the 20th.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
So anybody registered for public comment?
We're not aware of any. No, sir.
Okay, very good. Moving on to chairman's report. I don't have much other than we did have the full CVTA meeting last Friday the 4th, and then there is a finance committee meeting this Wednesday at 8:30 that will be held virtually. So I know many on this call will be participating in the finance committee meeting in some form. So other than that, I don't have anything else to report. Chet for the staff update.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to give a brief overview of the last few meetings that may impact this board. The Finance Committee met on November 9th was the last one. At that meeting, there was approval of, or a recommendation made to recommend approval of the Plan RVA Support Services Agreement, on recommending CVTA adoption of the FY21 administrative and operating expense budget, and then a resolution that the Finance Committee directed staff to move forward consistent with the proposed work plan by the Finance Working Group, and those went to the authority meeting. So the authority meeting was on December 4th. And at that meeting, there was a public hearing for the FY21 administrative and operating expense budget that was held after public review and posting in area newspapers and consideration of equity measures in distribution of the notice made by the CVTA at their October meeting. This was all done in accordance with the public engagement procedures that Plan RVA has adopted in the interim, since CVTA does not have any adopted measures yet. And we had no public comments submitted for the budget itself. But at the meeting, the authority did adopt the FY21 administrative and operating expense budget as presented. So the process carried through to the adoption of the budget. There was also an action by the CVTA to agree to the full VDOT revenue transfer agreement, including all of the 3 exhibits as has been discussed over the last few months. So that was approved and is being sent, I believe, today in full to VDOT, and well, to the chair and to VDOT for signature. The authority also authorized at that meeting the Finance Committee to select a qualified offerer of insurance services for the authority and to negotiate purchase of insurance coverage. And the transit service governance report, I will defer to later on in today's agenda to provide an update on that, but it is moving forward. And then finally, I believe the last item was discussion of the financial administration and management. And Darona and I just came from a finance working group meeting to discuss a lot of these issues. But the motion that was carried forward at the CVTA was that the authority authorized the Finance Committee to take such actions as are necessary and appropriate to establish banking advisory and audit services for the authority, and to develop such financial policies and procedures as are deemed necessary and appropriate for consideration of the CVTA at its next scheduled meeting. So that was what was moving forward, and the Finance Working Group, as I said, met this morning virtually to discuss what needs to happen next, and is working towards a plan to make sure that continues forward so that the authority has the ability to consider at its next meeting. That next meeting is January 29th, and right now, Mr. Mann, we are looking forward to meeting in person at the Richmond District new offices, and until some things change, we are expecting that meeting will be in person. So those are the two updates from the meetings I have, Mr. Chair. Be happy to take any questions, or many of you were in attendance as well, so I'd be happy to be corrected.
Thank you, Chet. Any questions regarding the report? All right, hearing none, we can move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is the task authority matrix. And since many of us don't know what that is, Chet, you get to explain it to us.
Thank you very much. I am going to share my screen, and this was a request that was actually made by Ms. Smith, and was something that we have started putting together. I've had a call with Barb since our last meeting, and this is really a kind of a visual guide to how the various processes may work within the CVTA and who is responsible. So we have the authority itself. We have 2 advisory committees, the TAC and the Finance Committee. We also have a finance work group and what has been called, I'm not sure if it's officially, but a council of councils. So all of the legal representation from each of the member jurisdictions. And they, for example, the legal folks work together multiple occasions dealing with the VDOT revenue transfer agreement. So really what we tried to do here, and this is a draft that you're seeing, was to kind of capture in, let's see if I can move it forward. Okay, capture like for particular kinds of tasks, who is responsible, how it proceeds into consideration by the full authority. So the first one here would be a financial task, like development of a budget or bonding activities. So the first one is each of these will have a driver, and most of those will be requests by the authority for X or Y to consider some type of action. That would go, a financial task would then go to the financial working group, where there could be, as needed, advice from the legal folks as well. They would develop an opinion, the financial working group, and then take that and put it before the Finance Committee to then make a recommendation back to the authority. And I'm going to go through these, and we can come back to them as needed to discuss. The next will be some type of a technical task, like prioritization of projects or planning reports. So again, a driver, most likely a request from the authority, will go to the TAC with input from the Finance Committee as needed, depending on what the task is. The TAC would then make a recommendation to the authority. Legal tasks, like agreements, like we just had done with the VDOT agreement. There'd be a driver, the request from the authority. It would go to the Council of Councils for legal consideration, and then a recommendation would be made to the authority itself. I could see here where if you wanted to add another step, where it would come back to the TAC or to Finance Committee before going to the authority, that would be reasonable as well. So the next 2 slides, I believe, are examples of how something like this might work. So the first would be an interchange modification report, and we would follow the technical process flow. So the authority would initiate the study. The technical advisory committee would develop the scope of work, solicit fee proposals, and make a recommendation onto the authority. But at this step, you would also have recommendations from the finance committee on impacts to the overall budget. So they would provide feedback to the TAC as it makes its recommendation. That would go on to the authority itself, and the authority would consider recommendation of the TAC based on the scope and fee, and then render a decision on how to move forward. This next one would be development of a regional 6-year plan. In this case, it would follow kind of a modified financial process flow. So the CVTA would request that TAC would begin the process. TAC would develop this type of a 6-year plan and forward it to the finance committee. At this point, the finance committee would bring in the finance working group to look at issues needed to, or concerns about issuing bonds, to finance regional projects and making a recommendation. And then the finance committee would decide on whether they recommend moving forward to the authority for a bond program, including use of existing locality financial management services. After the recommendation from the finance committee, the CVTA could authorize the finance committee to proceed with the bond process and recommendations, at which there would be a couple working parts. The staff would manage public review, forwarding comments to TAC, compiling comments into a report for the authority. Finance working group at this point could begin the review of the public comment report and make a recommendation to the finance committee. And then, as we said, the authority would then take the feedback received and either approve or put on hold the bond program for particular projects. That is a quick run through. As I said, Barb and I developed this together. Barb, if you have any other comments at this point, or we can take questions.
Todd, this is Barb.
Yes, Barb, please.
After the CVTA meeting in Henrico, we were all sort of talking about the need to kind of clarify workflow. You know, things are moving so fast right now that sometimes it's confusing as to how items are working through the process. And right now, we're also trying to get stuff done in such a with such quick turnaround that following these sorts of processes might not even be feasible. But I think outlining this and sharing it with the board, the full authority, might be useful so that people kind of understand how stuff is going to flow more normally when things settle down a little.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions, comments to either Chet or Barb on this effort?
And Mr. Chair, as I said, this is the first time any of you have seen it, so we'll be packaging this up and sending it to everybody following the meeting for review.
Yes, thank you. So let's talk through that a little bit. So you'll send it out for review, comment, give us a time frame where you'd like comments back. Is this something that you would propose would be going forward to the full CVTA in a future meeting for either informational purposes, or this isn't anything that needs action for adoption, correct?
No, this is more of an informational guide. So I would expect that we can certainly present this or a modified version at the January 29th meeting, just for the authority's information.
I think there would certainly be value to the CVTA members to kind of understand this a little bit better. I think it was clear based on some of the discussion at Friday's meeting, there's certainly a need for better understanding of workflow and processes, and for communication purposes and transparency throughout the whole effort we're doing. So. All right, so do you have any revisions to this draft before you send it out, Chet? Or are you good to send it out soon?
I'm fine sending it out this afternoon, unless anybody has any other comments.
Anybody have any other comments? All right. My only ask is when you send it out, Chet, give a time frame on when you'd like any comments back, just so that you have closure on it.
Sure, no problem.
All right, thank you for that. Moving on to the next item, 8 on the agenda, Regional Public Transportation Plan Progress Report. Adrian, you're going to provide that for us.
Hi, Todd. This is Adrian. Just a very brief update. We are finishing the final steps in procurement, hoping to get the notice to proceed, hopefully the earlier part of this week. We did have some initial conversations with the selected consultant, Jared Walker and group and Michael Baker, knowing that we were hoping to get everything kind of signed procurement wise in November, and now we are already done with the first week of December. So the timeline will be adjusted a little bit. We plan on reaching out to Chet and the MPO as soon as we get the notice to proceed to set up the first working group meeting. And in that we'll kind of go over the adjusted timeline and the expectations of kind of the group and the engagement process with that. So we're looking for after the holidays for that. So probably the first week of January. So the end of everything kind of is shifted about a month. So probably looking at the end of the plan being completed more like the end of April. But once everything gets signed and we get a new timeline, I will have a little bit more concrete information. But it is moving forward.
Thank you, Adrian, for the update. Any questions, comments for Adrian on this effort? Hearing none. Moving on to item 9, Transit Service Governance Report Progress. Chet, you're going to provide that?
Yes, I'm actually going to ask Tiffany to help me out, but I'll lay the foundation. So at the December 4th authority meeting, there was approval of the scope of work and the authorization of staff to move forward, working with the RPT to solicit proposals on developing the transit service governance report. Since that point, I have put together a draft solicitation and have shared that with DRPT. They've responded with a couple of notes, very well placed comments, and we are working towards. Staff is working towards getting that in a place where we can solicit those proposals. So a couple of things that are kind of still in flux. The scope of work was approved. We have determined since the December 4th meeting that the authority itself is where the approval of a contract needs to take place. So we can't actually get anyone working on this report until after the January 29th meeting. So we want to have everything in line to make that happen. The thing with the scope is that phases 1 through 3 have earlier deadlines than January 29th. So I wanted to get opinions from the group today on best next steps to handle that, whether we can adjust the scope without taking it back to the authority. But at the same time, I'm also scheduled to speak with the Secretary's office this week about to see if they have any major concerns with delaying dates in the reporting. As long as we do stick to that final June 30th, nothing can be submitted past then kind of deadline. So, Tiffany, I'd ask you to jump in and if there's any of the other comments that you wanted to make, that considering the solicitation itself.
Sure. I guess that with the solicitation, and I don't know how much you wanted to share about the details in it, but as of right now, before I guess the December 4th meeting, we had set an idea about trying to have the RFP out and then have a turnaround time for a deadline of December 11th. Kind of considering where we are now with December 7th, I kind of proposed that you would want to maybe at least push it out to the 16th or later, depending if we were waiting for the approval from however you want to do this in terms of releasing the RFP. But either way, it would at least need to be another week, not this Friday. I know that our consultants are well prepared, but I don't know if they could turn around in 5 days. The other thing I wanted to mention is that in the solicitation, it talks about the review and selection based off the proposals. And the solicitation mentions CVTA TAC in particular, but I had asked Chet the idea of whether or not he wanted the full committee or if he wanted to ask 2 or 3 members of the committee to participate, just because I'm so cognizant of over the next couple of weeks, if we wanted to have everything in line by about like January 4th or so to be prepared for presentation back to, TAC and finance before it goes up to the full authority, that would only leave maybe a couple of weeks based off of when we get proposals for everyone to review based off the scoring rubric that was identified in the solicitation, and then to finally, identify, but that also includes potential negotiations. So I threw it out there, the idea that maybe we'd want to have 2 to 3 members from TAC to maybe able to help out with that, in addition with Chet, and if you want another Plan RVA staff, and then to check in with Adrian if she's sufficient enough in order to serve on the solicitation panel for GRTC. I just figure 5 or 6 people will be easier in order to kind of get everything reviewed, depending on how many we get back in terms of proposals, and to have that ready for the next meeting for everyone to review. So those were just kind of my major points to kind of thinking about releasing this RFP out. And as far as the scope of work, I don't think anything had changed from the kind of the draft. It was just mostly the deadlines and kind of making sure that we're good on the deliverables that we're asking for from the report.
Thank you, Tiffany. So to Tiffany's point, Chet, what are your thoughts on having a sort of a selection group, subgroup?
We'd be perfectly fine with that. It might help to in our efficiency of review.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on size and composition, or ask for volunteers?
I think it would make sense to have maybe 5 people, representation from different jurisdiction sizes, other agency input.
Okay, and does that 5 would include GRTC and Department of Rail, or in addition?
I think it would include GRTC, and let's treat DRPT as staff at this point for the solicitation.
Okay. So Adrian, you've been volunteered, right?
Yes, I volunteer.
Okay. Who else would be interested? Dorana?
City of Richmond. Yep, Dorana.
All right.
Barb Smith.
All right. Barb Smith, Chesterfield. I will volunteer Henrico County. So we have City, Chesterfield, Henrico, GRTC. Anybody else interested? All right, hearing none, that gives you 4 plus the Department of Rail Public Transportation, and I assume you and your staff, Chet?
Yes, that would work fine. Todd, were you volunteering Sharon or yourself?
I'm happy to volunteer. This is Sharon.
It'll be a group effort, but you can put her name on it.
Okay, that works for us.
All right, so when can we expect to get something?
We will make some updates to the draft solicitation, and I think that Tiffany's advice of delaying submissions until December 16th makes sense.
Okay.
So I would expect something back to you just before the holidays then.
Very well. And what's your turnaround time for review and comment?
First week in January. I mean, I think we do have some flexibility with the board meeting at the end of the month.
Okay, is that where it will be, I guess, recommended for award?
Yes. Yeah, that's the goal, is let's get everything done by the 29th.
29th. Okay.
Hey, Todd, this is Barb.
Yes, Barb.
Have we thought about anything a little out of the ordinary, creative, maybe splitting out the initial work task and having someone else enter a contract just for those particular work tasks? I'm thinking about project management here at the county. There are times that we will say, we're going to scope a project and take it to some preliminary stage while we're waiting for authorization to begin the full project. Sort of that sort of thing. Or is it worth it? It seems like we're losing about 2 months.
Tiffany or Chet, any thoughts on that?
I would, two things. I would, I feel like I'd be better prepared to advise on that after I talk with the Secretary's office. I mean, in my mind, if they're okay with the reporting, then I'm okay. But I think that those are good points. We are losing time, but I would wait to ask about that. The other point is the scope has already been whittled down pretty significantly, and I'd hate to try and split what we budgeted in two ways at this point. I'm not sure if that was part of your recommendation, but I think that we'll be set with one task or one assignment for a consultant rather than trying to share it.
Yeah, what I was thinking was, let's say work task 1 we think is going to take a month, and it is a standalone work task. If someone were able to enter a contract just for that work task, we could pull it out of the full scope of work and get the consultant doing that while we get all the other approvals. And the reason I'm concerned about the 2-month delay is not so much about having this done. Like, I feel like once we get the report done, there's going to be a lot of discussion afterwards from localities. So I think we certainly can get the work done by June 30th and before, but we're squeezing that time for discussion from localities on the alternatives that are presented in the report.
So this is Tiffany. Sorry, Todd. I was trying to figure out if you did split it out and we tried to hire a consultant to do, for example, that phase 1, the strategic assessment. We're still coming up on the same issue about like the workflow and the authority approving any kind of work executed with the CVTA funds. So I mean, that's the only reason why we're kind of experiencing the pushback on the deadline, is just because we're doing kind of what was recommended in terms of getting the approval. Because I would have no problem with it, but either we're asking like plain RVA to front the funds until they get the full approval, or someone else would have to pay for that initial part.
That's
So
exactly
kind of the only reason why.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Is that a different entity would enter into a contract for that one work task? which would be a somewhat minor cost.
Donna, did you have something to say?
Well, I just want to make sure I'm clear. So we're talking about preparing, this solicitation panel is based off of the on-call contracts that DRPT has. So we're just kind of giving them a form of our scope and saying, tell us how much it costs and how you would do this and getting those responses back, correct? Or are we at a total separate
No,
RFP?
that's correct.
Okay.
So it's not like a formal solicitation. We would be distributing the solicitation and the scope of work that Plan RBA has prepared for the study. And then we would give them roughly a week timeline based off of what we're thinking with the deadline for them to return proposals. So it's not a full-blown
RFP, yeah.
solicitation, yes.
And
And then this group would review all the proposals.
yeah. No, I just wanted to just get clarification. And then, yeah, I don't know. I'm a little torn with Barb's suggestion. I don't know how much. I think I'm definitely with her on time frame, but then I don't know how, what that would actually do for the process, or who would actually pay for it and do it and how that would go about. And then if it's kind of like, lack of better terms, like Fed terms, pre-award authority that the CVTA is giving us to say, then we're gonna reimburse this entity for charges that they didn't ask us to, if we could spend, how that's gonna work as well.
Yeah, I wasn't really thinking of it being a reimbursement because then we're in the same problem that we're in right now.
Okay, so just a straight out expenditure.
Right. But I think what I heard before was that the on-call consultants are going to give proposals on December 16th. Is that what you guys said?
Yeah, that's the idea, is that would be their submittal date.
So that, we would need about a week to review it. And then you've got Christmas and New Year's. So I guess really all in all, we're losing 2 or 3 weeks.
Right. And I think we all know that in the last 2 to 3 months, we've hit the distribution deadline for agenda packets and gone over every single time. So we're really trying to make sure we get everything put together and distributed 10 days in advance, without a lot of last minute changes to agendas. So this might be comfortable, more comfortable, as we work towards the January 29th meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah, I once I thought about the timeline a little bit more, it's not quite as, I think probably the dates we had in the scope of work were just a little overly optimistic already. Okay.
Barb, I have a question to your concern about the anticipated, I guess, discussion and review from the CVTA. So I guess talk through that a little bit. My understanding that this is a report that will be prepared by the selected consultant that will include a list of options and recommendations, but simply that will be the end of the report as required by the statute, and then it will be up to the CVTA and the respective localities to either choose to adopt any of the recommendations going forward on a separate schedule, correct?
That's correct. But I think that before the report gets finalized, there's probably going to be a lot of back and forth. That we'll see a draft report, and that might be the point in time where there's a lot of discussion about the alternatives presented.
Right. So I would, I guess let's talk through the workflow process for the draft report. I'm assuming it will go out through to the TAC members, correct, Chet?
That's right.
Then each of the respective TAC members will take it back to their locality agency for, I guess, comment and feedback, hopefully in a timeline that would allow for any changes to be incorporated, sent back out for another review before going to the full CVTA. Is that your understanding?
Yes, yes sir.
So, I mean, I guess the critical path is make sure that the draft product from the consultant is meets a timeline that would allow for that that effort to happen, which will be an aggressive schedule, but much of everything else we're doing is on an aggressive schedule. So
That's right. And I would recommend, I mean, if we are able to do it, allow or expect the subcommittee, for lack of a better term, to work with a consultant on submittal dates and make sure that give that group some flexibility in determining when things are turned in, and guide the process directly to make sure that TAC gets something in time.
agreed. So what may be helpful in that effort, Chet, is in advance of feedback from the selection group, if you could kind of build a timeline backwards from the deadlines we know we have and how long you think we need for reviews and so forth to help identify those critical dates.
Sure thing.
All right. Any other questions, concerns, comments? All right. Hearing none, we can move on to the next item 10, CVTA TAC member comments. Anybody have any items they'd like to bring to the group? All right, hearing none. Next item is the next meeting date, which is January 11th, will be virtual again. And any topics that you know is going to need to be on there, Chet?
At this point, no, but I'm assuming we will be talking about transit governance. I think we've got some flexibility to add other things following this week. Like as you said, Finance Committee meets this week as well, so we'll see what turns up.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Chet, what about anything? I'm starting to forget where we are on the regional project prioritization.
That's a good question. We are, I think we're still a month or two away. Staff is working up some example projects for analysis in our prioritization tool. This is directed specifically to the long-range plan, but we are expecting to be able to bring that to the long-range plan advisory committee in January. I would think once there's some vetting of the tool itself and seeing how it works with different modes and types of projects, then we can bring it to this group to think about taking it on to the authority or doing something else, if there's any suggestions. Again, lots of spillover between the two TACs and the advisory committee. So we're looking at probably next month for at least a run through of how it works and some examples.
Okay, thank you.
Also, it's probably worth mentioning to this group that for all of the, I guess, localities in particular, the CVTA designee for each locality per code is coincident with their term of office. So by definition, all the local elected officials that change their status as chair of your local board typically rotates off on January. So I guess that by default requires either redesignation if you're going to have a new appointee, or otherwise it defaults to the chair. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff.
Yeah, that's correct. And thanks. Good. Thanks for bringing that up. There was some guidance sent out last week I know there were direct solicitations to locality legal counsel, but there was also something sent out to the authority itself, and I believe their designees, and maybe all of you got it as well. We're trying to cover our bases, but yeah, there is, that's something to think about over the next few weeks. And if you have further questions, please let me know, or and include Eric Gregory on that conversation as well. And we can provide recommendations.
And thank you. And this, I guess, gets complicated in a few cases just because we landed on the annual organizational meeting for CVTA is in July. So that's when the election of chair and vice chair occurs, as opposed to the January date, which I know is a topic of conversation. So for example, for Henrico County, Mr. Thornton is the chair of the CVTA, so we had to roll his appointment over into next year so that he can continue to serve in that role until July. So maybe it's less complicated for other localities. Otherwise, unless anybody has anything else, I think we've covered our agenda, Chet.
Yes, sir.
All right, and we were done in just over 45 minutes. So thank you for everybody's time, and we will, I guess, meet again on January 11th. So if we don't talk in the meantime, happy holidays.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.